looking at that model and thinking about some of the, I suppose, the theories behind group teaching or group facilitating, which is probably a better term. And you'd identified quite a well-known model. It's Tuckman's model of group processes, where we have storming, well, norming, storming, performing, and sort of closure within a group. So maybe you could just talk us through each one of those stages, starting with norming, and how that applies to facilitating small group teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a look at norming.
And it's one of these things that occurs to me. I know not everyone likes sort of educational theory, and obviously as educationalists, we absolutely love it. But I think unless you kind of understand small group dynamics in this context, you might get a little bit stuck and think, you might not understand what a normal process is. So I find this really helpful. When the group are norming, they don't know each other. They are beginning to share ideas and thoughts and beliefs. I think that part of the norming, especially from a facilitator point of view, has to be kind of with the group establishing ground rules. So you are all on the same page. If people are sort of veering off and turning up late or hogging the discussion, I think, you've got to have a group understanding of, we're going to be respectful, we're going to listen, and, that we're not going to be judgmental, we're going to give constructive feedback, whatever it is you want as a group, but you have to have those discussions. And I think the group has to always begin with, those conversations and making sure that everybody's thoughts and ideas are shared and heard and sort of incorporated into what the group wants to do and be.
So it's ground rules and sort of a social respect and cultivation of a social respect for each other. And I suppose then once you've set those expectations and rules, you move on to the next phase, which is storming. So tell me about your experiences of storming.
So the group's kind of actually trying to move on, and they might be wanting to carry out a task together. But it can easily sort of, create a bit of tension and conflict if, there are members of the group who sort of, are not clear what their roles are, and so, part of the facilitator's role is to kind of help the group sort itself out. And also, I think as a facilitator, think about the impact that you have on the group. Your behavior is really kind of crucial to that. So, because what you want to do is that storming is actually normal. So I think sometimes teachers worry about it within a small group, when you just suddenly, put lots of people together in a group who don't necessarily know each other. Most of our students often don't. That actually this is kind of normal and that's okay. And you want to sort of iron that out so that actually you get sort of a functioning group by the end of this sort of period. But it's normal.
And I'm guessing, and from my experience, you need to give it time as well. Sometimes you just can't fix these things in the first session, the second session. Sometimes it takes a few, doesn't it? If you're doing a number of sessions in group teaching or group facilitation, and once they get over that phase, which can sometimes take a varying amount of time, we then get to performing, which is what you hope they're going to start to do.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me though. We would always say to our teachers, if you are stuck at the storming phase and it seems to be going on a bit longer than you would expect, and as we said, Martin, it's kind of variable but at some point you want to be moving on sooner rather than later to a performing group. So I did encourage our teachers to get in touch with us or the stage 2 or 3 team if they are feeling a little bit stuck, because there might be lots of ways out of that. But the performing is actually the group has come together and they're working in a focused way on the activities, and sort of it's kind of collaborative. It's kind of what you want to see in a group, that they're all kind of working together and sticking to the ground rules and appreciating each other. And it's sort of a well choreographed sort of dance where everyone is kind of doing what they should.
And then when they've got through that performing stage, or they continue to perform together, we look at this idea of closure, which was actually quite new to me in the Tuckman's model. I'd not seen the word closure before. You might be able to just expand on what that means for a group.
I think, like, it's sort of like if you were having therapy, you don't just suddenly stop seeing your therapist. You actually have a period where you sort of think, actually, these are our last few sessions. What do we want to do? How do we bring it all together? Because actually, if you've had a really good group, there is quite a big sense of loss and of sort of mourning at the end of that. Especially, I've heard stage 2 teachers say that after a year of their group being together, the group still hung out together. This was obviously pre-COVID, but that they would also really actually miss their teacher and want to sort of keep in touch and come back and have, like, a cup of tea just to say hello, because especially over a year, you become quite a big part of people's lives. And I hear stage 3 teachers that tell me that they still keep in touch with their students who are now qualified doctors, and I think it's just to recognize that actually we should sort of mark that the closure of a group.
Yeah, and for anyone that's facilitating groups, that's probably quite an important part of the process, sort of debrief as well, and to say goodbye or see you again.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice model that I think we can follow in all kinds of circumstances, not only in teaching in primary care, but also in terms of leadership and management. And that this statement, I think, is quite poignant.
Yeah, I love this from Jacques, that actually you're going to have, if you've got a group of people with their own ideas and approaches, you're going to have something wrong. That's kind of normal. And most GPs are problem solvers, and educators are problem solvers. So actually it's just kind of thinking, you're almost expecting it, not thinking that this is something, you're doing something wrong. If you can expect that it's not always going to go swimmingly, then you will have kind of a bit of an idea as to how you might approach it and the sort of things that can commonly go wrong.
Yeah, okay.